Shall we do budget committee stuff?
Yes, all this is H. I have a request to have a little preamble to what we're doing.
Yeah, thank you. So some of you may know this, but Keith Walker has started a petition, essentially asked the town of Barrington and the school district to put on a warrant article that says that there's a combined advisory budget committee. I think the chance of that happening is next to nothing, right? I do think it's important it is because I think it's, again, starting to put pressure on the board. So he's going to go there and present that today at the budget committee for the school. I'm going to go there and support him, but I'm actually more interested because I think that that's never going to happen. My interest is more kind of start a discussion with them about coming to the table in this spring, now it's this year, to talk about long-range planning. But before I did that, I wanted to do two things. First, make sure that you all are interested in doing long-range planning of some sort. And two, whether or not you'd be interested in the school integrating with us in some fashion. Are you all comfortable with that?
I think it makes sense. There's one pot of money and we have these two different budget committees. And to me, it makes sense to have one because we're dealing with the same pot of money and we should at least have in the back of our mind what the school's requests are, what the towns are. So to me, it makes sense either a combined budget committee or if we still have two, there's got to be more integration.
And I think that it's going to be too much for the school to consider opening up the books to us. And that's fine. The nice thing about long-range planning is that you don't have to look at today's budgets or yesterday's budget. It's more focusing on where we're going and what we need to consider. And that's often something that people can think about and maybe can even open up to and may be willing to start that conversation. You got to start somewhere. And that's part of finding those commonalities.
I've watched their process for the last 3 years pretty closely. And their advisory budget committee doesn't do much advising.
I know.
They're presented with the budget, discuss the budget, then the advisory budget committee supposedly looks at it, and then the next week they come back and they talk about the whole budget. That's it.
And I recognize that, and I realize that this may be a fool's errand to do, but I'm feel pretty strongly about this, and I really want to figure out how to get this to happen. And so, but here I've got
the only way.
Yeah,
This may be the only way because their budget committee doesn't do a great deal.
They don't have a lot of time.
They don't have a lot of time. They don't have a lot of time, and they don't spend a lot of time. They don't make many changes or recommendations. I mean, it does come to the school board to make decisions, but they don't really like this committee puts together. This committee really looks at the budget. I'm not sure how much they look at budget. They're talking $4 changes here and there.
yeah. But I look at their 5-year goals, and goal 1: collaborate for strategic plan to safeguard fiscal stability. And number 2 is build relationships between Barrington school organizations and the community in order to facilitate involvement and mutual support. And the thing about this is that they focus just on the school, right? And yet they need to be looking at this more broadly, right? So we have things like we support the rec center, right? We support the library. Both of those have real impact on the school-age kids in our town. You can also look at our general police services, our emergency services. You know, if people start to say no to a $300,000 warrant article next year or this year, and that doesn't pass, right? So now we have to not $300,000 this year, $600,000 next year. It immediately starts getting our budget out of whack. And what can happen is we can have all the funding for the school, but no funding for the services that are need to get kids to the school and to protect kids in the school. So my goal for them is to start to think about this more broadly. And I agree, it's not going to probably even happen today. I think it's going to take more work, and I'm signing up to do that work. But because I feel it's important, but that's sort of my pitch to everyone.
John?
I haven't been part of that
side of it, I know there's a lot of just rubber stamping.
Mhm.
I think it all depends on what the structures are gonna be, how many people. Because you just don't want to end up having a combined budget committee where you lose the focus of a budget committee and then you end up with a 5-hour meeting every week. Going through this with 12 people and you get nowhere.
Right.
Or look at it from another viewpoint. You know, when you have a 5-person budget committee and that, and every one of them's like the school board budget is right now, and we're not there. Is that what you really want to go and have?
Well, I think that this is all very a negative interpretation based upon real life experience. But that's why I say there's two things here. One is the combined budget committee, which I, was just asking for you to put on a warrant article. I think we all know that that school won't do that. I don't even know that the town would do that, right? And so to me, that's why I think it's silly in a way, but it is an opening. And so for me, the more substantial opening is whether or not you'd be want to do a long range plan this spring, and 2, whether or not at some way, some level, we try to invite the school to participate in that, even if the town does theirs, the school does theirs, and at the end we come together, or we do it some other more integrated way. And so would you all, I mean, I don't want to go to the school and say, hey, please do this, and then us to turn around and say, no, we don't want to do that with you.
Well, my own feeling is that the town itself here has multiple processes related to long-range planning. There's envisioning and all of that effort that's been put together. There is the capital improvement plan. That is the long-range plan started now really looking at it. We have a plan, long-range plan with chapters that get revised by the Stratford consultants. That's worth, but I would prefer to see us in the town say, let's put our own long-range planning and strategic planning together, which would then lead toward, well, wait a minute, that we're missing a big piece of that process called the school, and then bring them in and say, we have this process. We need your input to that process as well. And whether it goes through the budget committee or another process with the administrators themselves to bring them into the total town long-range planning process. So that's just the way I would kind of try to approach something.
But if I sort of summarize, what I'm hearing you say is, yes, you believe that there should be some integrated long-range planning. How we get there is unclear. And I agree with you with that 100%. I guess I'm just trying to start somewhere, because today there is no starting and no pushing.
When you say long range plan for the budget committee?
For the budget committee.
Okay, for the budget committee, I agree. I think we need to have, there's got to be communication back and forth. What they do affects the town and thus affects what we do. What we do affects them and the town. And to have two separate bodies doing the same thing or allegedly doing the same thing without talking seems kind of.
There might be room for going and having more coordination in that.
Yeah, so to me, the budget collaboration this year, next year's budget will never end. All right. So the question is, where do you start? And I think that's the problem. No one knows where to start. No one even knows what they would agree to. We haven't decided on our end, but you got to start somewhere, folks.
A couple things, if I may. So Chief Walker and I have talked about this a lot. And I think one of the perspectives which is really valuable is that the town had a combined advisory budget committee and for many years. And from Chief Walker's perspective, one of the reasons it dissolved is because the town select board was the one appointing the members, and that the school wasn't psyched about that. And I don't blame them. And so to John's point, the petition warrant article actually spells out the makeup. It would be 2 members appointed by each board, 1 member appointed by both, and then each board would put up an alternate. And so there would be kind of equal representation. Now, the big states, small states argument comes in. Okay, we have a $9 million budget, 2.5 members, and they have a $30 million budget, 2.5 members. Is that fair? But it's that's just simple, right? But I think a couple other things. The advisory budget committee, Scott, you said, I don't know, though that warrant article would be advisory, right? There's no statutory mechanism to force the town or the school to do that. I actually think that this select board I wouldn't be surprised if all 5 of our sitting select board members would sign those petitions. Because I think that this select board is very interested in collaboration and cooperation with the school. Relative to planning, a couple things. The school participates a little bit, right? They submit items for the capital improvements program. They sometimes participate a little bit in the master planning, but there's a ton of room for improvement. Finally, when I started in Barrington, my first involvement in government was I was a student rep to the school board and a school board member. And so when I came to Barrington, I was on this side, and I was like, I'm gonna get involved, and I'm gonna go do as much as I can with the school. And Dan came on kind of on the tail end of it, but we put together. I worked with the select board to put together a shared services agreement that kind of spelled everything out. It was kind of laying the groundwork for that. And it kind of fizzled out. But there is tremendous opportunity for improvement. And I think, Bill, you started to touch on this. Is it budget related? Is it planning related? Like, how big does it get? One of my first questions to Chief Walker when he brought up the idea of the petition warrant article was, this group's going to get together and it's going to snowball into all these different ideas. And I said, I think a big part of that will be look at all these ways the town and school can cooperate to save money. Now, yes, that has a budget impact, but it's not necessarily a combined budget committee's responsibility to execute those efficiencies. And so, him and I talked about it, like almost the first task would be for the combined group to put together a shared services opportunities list and then ship that off to, maybe it's the boards, maybe it's the superintendent and I, the superintendent and me, but the planning as a phase of that, I think I would agree that there's tremendous opportunity and that it is a duty to the residents to do everything we can to watch the dollars and cents and look for those opportunities. If we're not sitting at the table looking for excuses to get together to do it, I don't think it will happen. And I say that because I've been here for 5 years and I spent 2.5 of those years really trying to make it happen, and it didn't happen. And so hopefully it'll move the needle.
I mean, when your first goal is to safeguard fiscal stability.
I love that you pulled those two things out.
That's a real statement that they made, right? And interestingly, there's nothing in their mission, vision, values that talk about academic excellence. But that's neither here nor there. To me, I don't want to take over the meeting. If you want to sign this, you're welcome to do so. If not, and so what there are, you can read it as just two articles, one for the town and one for the school. You want to sign them? They're right here. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, let's moving on. We hopefully keep this pretty short. What we have is some new information that this library committee and Ms. Gallo has put together for us. And I wanted to start with looking at that and any other warrant articles that we had mixed votes on, or where we have more information that has come to bear, so we can make sure that our position is consistent with where it was before, or if there are changes, we can make some changes. Acceptable goal. Anything anybody else want to add to that? Okay, let's start with the library. I think with the information that we now have, we have much more specifics, which was something that the committee was definitely wanting to see. I'm not sure that any changes have been made to the direction and the approach that's being taken with this one. It still has some of the same uncertainties with the property that they're thinking about acquiring and all of that, but the specifics is there in terms of the costs. To poll people to see how your positions are staying the same, or any additional views you have related to that information that has modified your thoughts about how we should support the library going forward.
And just make sure we're on the same page. New information is the budget document. I sent it out. It's up on the screen now. This is the line item, building and land purchase, renovation costs, the result of the building committee from the library and the library trustees. The total project budget is $3,331,324. They have, for the deliberative or for the budget public hearing, they have $314,000 cash on hand. And so that's where the numbers from that, and I included that in my email. And then, so that's taken out and then added back in is that $300,000 for the kind of doing the kind of bare minimum at the space that they would vacate the recreation building, assuming that there's no other money available to do that. And so that's where we get the number, which I should have pulled up also. 2024 warrant.
These construction costs, these are all on the new building, correct?
Yes.
That doesn't cover any of the renovation costs for the old.
300,000 is that number.
Oh,
Yep.
That's what the 300,000 is.
oh,
So the total raise and appropriate number, and I don't expect this will change, is $3,631,324. I'll put up the warrant article so you can see what I'm looking at here. This is the warrant webpage. I sent out the link to this one also. So $3,631,324. So that's the total raise and appropriate. That includes the total project cost for the library and the $300,000 for the old space to fix up the old space. The bond number is the next number, which right now is $3,319,324. So that number, assuming that fundraising targets continue to be met, that number will continue to go down between now and deliberative session. Deliberative session will be the last opportunity to update the number. And then you see here that it reflects 312, I think it said 314, but 312,000 from the Barrington Library Foundation. So that's the new information. And I can pull the budget back up.
And then you also provided the bond
Yes.
rated information for us. It says that starting, and now I guess if it's awarded in 24 or 25, when it starts, it adds 19 cents to the tax rate. And then will gradually decline as principal. So.
And importantly, I don't know what your projections are about interest rates, but they're always conservative with these debt schedules. So when they did their sale in July of 2023, they got an interest rate of 3.65%. And that was like peak interest rates for anybody that tracks this. They have estimated the interest rate that they used for this document is 5.25. So, you know, a full 1.5 higher than what they got in July. Kind of seems like interest rates are trending the other direction right now.
So today,
Well, what was the news today? I didn't see.
rates went up.
Oh, did they? Fed rates?
I think I just saw a headline why the S&P went down.
Oh.
The Fed doesn't meet though for
What the Fed rate change.
now with this bond, is that
It's
a
just market
locked-in
rate.
interest rate?
Yes. It's a locked in interest rate and there's no prepayment. So the whole thing with municipal bonds is stability. And so if we did this and the interest rate was 5.25%, we would pay a total of $5,136,000, period. Interest rate doesn't change, but you also can't buy down any principal if we got a big donation.
And that's likely.
Wait, well, Peterborough, was that the town? Did you guys see the news? Jaffrey, Peterborough, Peterborough?
I think it was Peterborough.
A resident died and left like $5 million to the town. I'm like
his kids.
my first thought was, not one idiot, but what an idiot. You pay taxes your whole life, you get, but he was committed to his town. Good for him. I just thought about the guy that donated, the librarian that donated $1 million to the university, and they bought a scoreboard with it. I'm like, this guy donated the $5 million, and they're going to do something. They're going to pave a road over his house or something. Anyways.
So what are you looking for us to do?
Well, just wanted to see if you're both in the position you had during our formal vote for this issue has changed. I don't imagine yours has changed. Done.
Well, it's not.
Done.
I think this is the best deal we're gonna get.
So your vote stays the same, so we will leave that as our official vote.
Yeah, and we'll take the actual recommendation vote when we meet on the 9th. But I think it's good, and I'm glad we're meeting to give the select board the advice when they meet on the 8th and take their recommendation votes, that they kind of get a sense of what the if ABC is going to do.
Which is why I timed it for this, because you're listening, but to let them know. Okay, that's the library. Now, one of the things that we also had was, and I'm not sure exactly what the resolution was, the community center, and whether that's now still on the ballot, the language has changed on that. And so what?
Nothing changed.
Yeah.
Nothing changed since this committee supported unanimously. We pulled out the 500,000, and it's
Okay.
just the grant, just contingent on
Okay,
receipt.
so that did happen.
Mhm.
That's what we asked for. So, sure. The other issue I see is the TIF, I know that term was shortened, or what we're doing after TIF.
That's staying the same.
No,
Oh, no.
well, it hasn't changed since it hasn't changed since then, but it's different than last year. So kind of three things. It is smaller. So instead of 1,200 acres, it's 400 acres. It is more specific. So last year it was really abstract because there wasn't anything to do. There was much less of a vision last year. Some might say there's still less of a Black's vision this year.
Vision in one eye,
But
patch on the other
but I got 2010 in one eye, so that's gotta be okay. So it's much more specific this year because the plan is to buy the 13-acre lot and establish the Barrington Commons, which would be a recreation area and an area for redevelopment of adjacent property. Most specifically the old Knights property in front of that. And make improvements in the larger town center area, signs and sidewalks and things like that. And it's shorter. Last year it was 20 years. This year it's 8 years. And so the mechanism is still very much the same. It's using incremental taxes to accomplish a goal, an identified vision. The vision, I've spent a lot of time trying to distill it down, like most specific. I actually spent 45 minutes on the phone with Garth today. I think the vision is equally preserving Barrington's character, which means we take this 13-acre lot and instead of having a 90-bed skilled nursing facility with another 80 residential units on it, or what they have proposed in the marketing materials is 5 commercial buildings with a combined 90 residential units above these buildings. I think it's preserving a piece of Barrington's character in the center of town that we can have open field space and park space and gathering space. So that's part of the vision. Also part of the vision relative to commercial development isn't to make a huge commercial tax base right in the town center, because there are other places that are good for that, but to make sure that there's opportunity for the type of commercial development that people say that they want to see, right? So Knight's Garage, just as one example, they can't be anything else because they can't get approval for a well or a septic. So that was on the market for almost a year. Maybe the most prime piece of commercial retail-ish real estate in Barrington is on the market for a year because there's no redevelopment potential. And the buyers are doing the exact same, the buyers are doing what was done before because it's vested use. If the town buys the lot and develops it recreationally, we can sell development rights, basically, septic loading or drill a well that doesn't impact any of the uses of that lot and add tremendous, like tens of millions of dollars of redevelopment potential to just that lot. And where it's better than kind of out behind. One of the biggest problems with this 13-acre lot is there's no visibility. Nobody has bought it. Nobody has bitten on it because you're landlocked. You have access, you touch the different roads, but you can't get there. So anyways, so I think there's a preserve Barrington's character, recreation development, a place for residents to gather, and there's this economic tax-based component, which is let's invest in this area so businesses invest in this area and we maintain this quaint town center. And it's a place that businesses can thrive. So
Yeah, but Frank Jones can't serve plates because it doesn't have water and doesn't have sewage.
So, and I think that's conceptually what
Mhm.
it was, and I've always supported that concept.
Mhm.
The issue of should the advisory committee be, is there a tax impact,
Mhm.
great impact on that? Has to do with the fact that some of that property in that TIF district now is being developed or will be developed without having a TIF. And those, as their assessments go up, all of that does not contribute to the town's tax base itself. It stays within the TIF.
temporarily, right?
But that is a tax impact.
No question.
On the meaning that as the depreciation goes up, we don't get the benefit of that within the municipal budget tax rate.
Correct.
So there is a tax impact on the TIF.
No question.
So, for
But
me,
we still get the same taxes we get now.
but we don't get the appreciation.
So,
And I think the point that you're making, landing that plane, is for that reason, you feel that the budget committee should be making a recommendation on that.
That's correct.
That's your point on that. Yeah. And I think that that issue is unresolved with the select board, but I think that making a statement tonight and recording to them how we feel about it is
That's
perfect.
That's
Yeah.
where I was.
That's where you're
to
going.
go.
Okay, perfect.
So what I'd like to do is ask this whole member to see what your position would be on the TIF itself as it's current.
Conceptually, still,
Well, no, and there's potential taxing.
right, but it's still conceptual.
Oh, yeah, well, sure. It's saying that is a process that would either support because it would bring additional benefits than just letting it develop as people develop it. And provide the opportunity for the town to kind of steer things to put a community center and all the other things, and whatever you wanted to call it, together for the town.
I wasn't sure if you were gonna do this tonight, so I can pull up the plans. But if you want to have more of a conversation and go into what, where things stand right now. The financing plan and development agreement is done, that 15-page document. And so that the select board reviewed that on December 11th. And then we had TF Moran, an architectural engineering company, do an updated vision for the town center and for that Barrington Commons law. And there's updated drafts of this that are due to me tomorrow to be presented to the select board on the 8th. Let me go to share here. Okay, so this is zoomed out. And there'll be some different things that you see here. But big picture, what this shows is that with an established tax increment financing district, the town would intend to make improvements kind of in this area, like school zone signs as you approach the elementary school and the middle school, focusing on these recreation paths and connectivity to the town center outside of just 9 and 125. And everybody talks about sidewalks on 125, which are part of the state 10-year plan. It will happen at some point, but there are other ways to get to the town center. We have snowmobile trails that can be developed into access trails and to bring people to the town center, kind of like hike, bike trails, things like that. So what you don't see on here, but you'll see in the updated plan, is there's development underway on this lot. Those are the 43 units. TurboCam bought this lot, which they are working on development plans for. This is where the 80 units are going to go. I guess you can only just barely see my cursor. This is where those 80 units are going to go. This lot is on the market. So zooming in from here, so this is kind of like that core 9 and 125 intersection. This is that 13 acres. This is what would be the Barrington Commons. So you see there's all this land in front of it. There's no visibility on Route 125. This is its access on Route 9, but there's no visibility on Route 9. And so there hasn't been a lot proposed on here. There's that elder care campus, which very likely could be a nonprofit model and they wouldn't pay any taxes anyways, but a lot of dense residential development. So what this plan shows is that we could get this kind of dense development along 125, and this redevelopment would be supported by this lot. So we're tapping into the development potential of this lot, getting that tax base, but not actually building on it. And instead, actually offering something to residents, preserving this character, giving an opportunity for residents to gather down here. So you see some gazebos here. There would be like a programming pavilion. This facility down here is almost like a Jackson Landing, like a big pavilion, but it's open air. They have ice making equipment. So, they have like an ice rink there. This is like, playground, bicycle track, cheap, like disc golf. But using the lot, making this lot available to residents, bringing people to the town center, giving people something else to do in the town center, but getting development potential here. Just off the map here is the Frank Jones restaurant, which similarly redevelopment potential. They have a deed restriction that they have to have paper plates because they can't get an approved septic to accommodate a dishwasher. And so that redevelopment potential to take and say, okay, let's invest in those lots by offering up parts of this lot. And
who decides what actually the land is used for? So you talked about pavilions and things. Who actually decides that? And do residents get any say in that?
yeah, and so that's one of the big things that we're trying to figure out how to communicate on these plans. Because this isn't a plan to show that this is what things will look like. And specific to just the Barrington Commons lot. This is what we've heard residents would like to see. We are proposing to go down the path to provide these things to you, but residents will be a part of the decision-making for doing all of these things. Think like how the library did their session where they put up all the different possibilities and people put stickers on, but that type of engagement to actually make the decisions. Practically, the tax increment financing district would have an advisory board that advises the select board on decision-making. And so that would be the formal process, but that advisory board would take, okay, this is the conceptual that we propose to residents. Now let's start looking at phases and go to residents, because we're not going to be able to do this A, all at once, or B, in the first year, 2 years, even 3 years. And so that process will happen after. The big decision that has to be made now is to draw the boundaries of that TIF district and then start down that path of buying the lot and having funding to make some of the improvements. Because 8-year window is like super short when it comes to this type of work.
Can that advisory board change the boundaries or just?
No, only voters can. Which the only reason I made it 8 years was to get John's support. So I'm really counting on that because really tightened the belt on the needle some more. And one other thing that I want to mention, because this is something that we had a stakeholder meeting and I pulled John in to make sure that we were listening to the contrarian perspective of what we're doing here. So one of the things was about the school and school funding, and Garth Svensson was part of the conversation. He's on the school board and owns the Christmas stuff. So the school has direct costs. And so imagine there's a residential development inside the district and there's 20 more high school students. That's $360,000 direct cost to the school district. And so what I heard from Garth and John reiterated also is there should be a mechanism in the TIF district that says if those direct costs exist, every other resident shouldn't be hit up to pay for them. That should be you should be diverting that portion of the revenue that you're collecting there to cover those costs. And so there's and that's one of the things I was talking to Garth about on the phone today, but there's a provision in the financing plan that says we recognize that there might be safety impacts and school impacts, and those shall be addressed in the disposition of the funding. Like it's not, those aren't just to be ignored. And so it's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird problem to solve right now because we don't know exactly what the problem that could come up is going to look like. So it's hard to specifically articulate how it would be addressed. But big picture saying, we know that there might be impacts and we're committed to addressing them and we shall address them as, dictated by the language in this document. So that's a component of it too.
So that same principle would be applied for the additional town facilities.
Right.
And maintenance costs that our road agent has to have and.
Some of them are easier, like if there's sidewalks and the road agent has to buy a skid steer to maintain the sidewalks, that's a very easy expenditure of the TIF district.
But it has to put labor on that. Though.
And labor too. Yep. What Garth and I think John, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I think they were concerned about is the more abstract impact on cost. So think from a safety perspective, if we're encouraging residents to gather and there's a lot more programming happening down here, maybe there's like, every summer night, every weekend summer night in the summer, maybe we need another duty unit just to kind of go play interference because we've got a lot of things going on down here. And maybe they're community events, so nobody's paying a detail. Residents shouldn't necessarily be shifted to that burden if we have this development that could pay for it. And so maybe we pay for that out of the TIF revenue instead of the regular town budget. But again, we're talking kind of like super short term with 8 years. And so by the time these problems really manifest, it's going to be a moot point because everything's back on the tax base. And so we have a plan to address them if they come up in time. But then after 8 years, it's just.
Well, but if it's been back, some of the benefits are there that board can't extend that time.
The residents, not the board. Only residents can extend it or change the boundaries.
If there are, if it is proving that the benefits are there or very near, then you would have to change that.
Right. And not to mention, if 2 years in, the residents are like, wait a minute, this is going way sideways. They dissolve it and you only get one chance a year. I guess they could have a special meeting, and it goes away.
As you all probably know, I've been supportive to. So I will continue to support. See what positions are.
I would support the TIF district. I believe there is a strong case to be made that if there's a tax impact, this group should be able to weigh in on it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I don't know.
We've made progress from last year. Take that one to the baby.
I just every time we talk, I have more questions.
They'll never all be answered.
No,
but
and that's
Leaps of faith.
Well, you're not forced into taking a position here, but you could say that you need more information.
Yeah, I just like if this passes in March, when does it technically start?
then.
So your 8 years is really 7 years because you're not going to do
Right.
much this year.
Exactly.
So you've wasted a year in theory.
Oh, you want it to be 9 years. That's what I heard.
No.
Everyone else hear that?
No.
We can amend it to 9 years. Okay.
The reality though is, can you get developers to buy in, get this developed and whatnot within 8 years, and then actually obtain some of that revenue to do the Ferris wheel and all the other stuff you want? So like if you
It's an excellent question.
if you can't tell me that, if you had developers saying, hey, if this was a TIF and you guys were going to do septic and wells so we could develop on 125 where Knights is, but we have to have this because we need that because we can't afford to clean up the land, then I feel a lot more comfortable. I know how long things take, and then it passes. What if the developer comes in and everything they want to do, the planning board says, sorry, we don't approve that, and then now you got nothing?
It's a really good question, and this is maybe the most direct way to answer it. So this is a little bit of a less conventional TIF because like what you're talking about is the success depends on future development. So what we would do here is essentially take value that's already in the pipeline. So we're not waiting for developers to get approval on something and relying on that revenue to buy this lot, make these improvements, make these other improvements. What we're saying is we already have development in the pipeline with unrealized value that we can capture, invest, and create future opportunity even after the TIF is gone for the other development to happen in a more favorable environment. So these 40 units, there's probably $8 million left in unrealized unrealized tax value here. And then these 80 units, there's probably $20 million just there. So those two lots alone would really be in the simplest term, those two lots over the next 8 years would be what would buy this lot and pay for these developments. That lays the groundwork after the TIF is gone for the redevelopment of lots along here. We haven't even looked at Dove Development Group and how this ties into the whole thing. So the idea is we wouldn't even have the TIF district in place at that point because we've laid the groundwork, we've made we've laid the groundwork, we've made the investment, and then we're realizing that return over time. These are residential projects, and that's really where John and Garth's perspective of these residential projects could have a tax impact, especially in the school, and we shouldn't ignore that. And so that's kind of where that provision came from. But we're taking this value, investing it here, and creating additional value potential here, even after the TIF is dissolved.
You're talking $500,000 a year.
Maybe at year 5, like those 80 units aren't going to be that value isn't going to be here.
Right, so you're even less. I guess, so what are we actually generating for revenue out of this TIF, I guess is the question.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if we're doing this for $2 million, is it worth it?
So is it worth it? Yeah, I think even if the TIF is just a funding tool, but it's not the only funding tool. Even if we're just able to use the TIF as a funding tool to buy that lot and get that lot under municipal control, and then we have future opportunities, maybe that's all we do is buy the lot because that's all the money that we realize. Then maybe when we sell the development rights of that lot to whoever wants to redevelop the old Knights property, maybe that's when we use that money to make some of the improvements on that lot.
Yeah, using TIF money to buy that lot is not helping your case.
Yeah. That's step one, though. That's the problem.
One of the reasons we want to do it, like to do it now, is because the TIF calculation starts from this tax last year, April.
Well, tax values are as of April 1st. So that only carries over once a year. So all of the new tax value from the last April 1st, not the revaluation, but from the last April 1st, would be realized in that first year. But not until people pay their tax bills. So we're still only working 7 years. And I think I'll say John Morris wants it to be 9 years.
What he said.
That's what he had.
That's what it sounded
No, all I said was we wasted a year. It was really a 7-year TIF is what you're saying.
Oh, I wanted it last year, but somebody on the budget committee.
You wanted to retire and it would still be
It's not a waste because we're going to get the additional tax. We'll get more tax value added onto it because we calculated from April 2023. If you wait until next year, then it'll be whatever the value of those properties are.
How much is Knights willing to relinquish their property for the current owners, not necessarily Knights?
Yeah, so interestingly, over the summer when this process started, the select board directed me to meet with all the neighbors, and I did, except the new owners because they just had a kid, and then their kid was sick, and I actually have a meeting with them Thursday now to have that conversation, and how this came up at the stakeholder meeting. This lot, right? This development right here, Knight sold for like $1.1 million. So that's the assessed value, right? It's $1.1 million. This kind of development would be worth $15 million or more, right? And by the time it happens, maybe even more than that. The problem is, the problem as I see it, is that if this lot is developed to its fullest extent, which a commercial buyer comes in and develops it. And that puts money on the tax rolls, which is great. It's kind of a weird lot. Where's the access? How are we really attracting people here? But if that lot's fully developed, the redevelopment potential of this lot is like nil. So even if the current owners of this lot don't have any interest in doing anything other than Knights in the Depot, it doesn't matter because this is an investment in 20 years. When the new owners or when the current owners decide that they want to redevelop it, now there's redevelopment potential and it's development in the right spot, right? I mean, I think if we're talking commercial and retail and visibility, this lot obviously has a ton more value than this lot. And if we can use this lot to maximize development potential of this lot, that's the investment. But the timeline doesn't have to be.
Now, we were talking about taking these two pieces of property and combining them and then going and redrawing the property lines so that, they do have
No.
the ability for wells and sewage or whatever.
Nope, it would basically be like an easement. So you can do it in a couple of different ways. You can actually install a septic system on your lot if your lot can't support it, if you have a septic loading easement on an abutting properties lot. So we could sell them an easement and they could put new septic system under their lot. And what we're saying is we're selling you some of our septic loading capacity. Well, if we were going to provide well capacity for them, that would probably be a matter of drilling a well on our property and giving it to them at a cost. Yeah. So the lot lines would stay the same, theoretically. Yeah.
Any questions?
Hard questions.
Here, maybe.
I don't even know, honestly.
Yeah.
Undeclared,
Okay, that's all right.
undefined.
I think the risk area that's pretty close to being equal at this.
Where would you come up?
I can't go and argue against it. I can't, well, I don't feel like I want to argue for it.
It's funny that you say that because at a department head meeting, and I tried to describe to the department heads our duty in helping residents understand what our needs were. And I don't like saying wants because it's not really what I mean, but I feel like this year, more than any year recently, we are presenting side by side residents things that we need. We need the operating budget. We need the capital reserve contributions. And right next to that, we're presenting them options for things that they've said that they want. And it's our duty to give them a way to make happen things that they said that they want. The library, the
library and the community center.
Right.
Yes.
The community center, these things. And so, yeah, I feel that I don't know how to say, we need this because we don't, but giving the residents that choice. So that what you said resonated with me. How do you talk about
That they deserve a voice.
Yeah.
So at this stage,
Serve a voice.
They have a voice.
If we go and we say yes to having the TIF district, we're not spending any additional money, but we are going and limiting the possibility of additional revenue until a later date.
Mm-hmm. It's an investment. Yeah.
so is it possible that I can posture a position that the ABC is currently at? There are 3 in support and 2 undecided.
Mhm.
And consensus that we feel that our opinion and position should be available for public consumption. The board would accept that as part of the warrant. Does everybody agree with that statement?
I mean, undecided does not mean that we're against it.
Correct.
Right.
Well, it's just, but
I know Johnson supported it. He just,
it just.
he just holds on to. He just holds on to.
He wants the 9 years.
I want the first ride on the Ferris wheel.
I have to give John a lot of credit. He has invested a tremendous amount of time digging into the details and feeding me a lot of questions and concerns, which has forced me to prepare a lot of materials that I wouldn't have otherwise. And that's the kind of dedication, even if he doesn't like it, that we're fine tuning, we're optimizing a proposal, and that's based on input. And not everybody's willing to give input. John Morris is willing to give input.
We appreciate that. That makes this committee even more productive.
Mm-hmm. We can't be an echo chamber. 100% can't be an echo chamber.
So let's move on to the next item. I'm not exactly sure where we stand on the Richardson Pond.
That's off.
That's off.
Gone completely.
Waiting for it to fall.
Yep.
Confirm it.
It overtopped with 4 inches of rain. I went out the next morning and it was completely, and it had started eroding away on the southerly abutment. The water, did you go down? Or you just know? Yeah.
One more flood, hopefully we'll do it.
Yeah. I took pictures of the torrent of water coming off the other side.
Give it a couple
I
more
don't know if
years
you've
like
been
this
down
and we won't have to worry about it.
That's over looking off the bridge, downhill. It was just crazy. Okay, so no Richardson Pond.
Now, transfer station. That we're supposed to.
Highway transfer station bargaining, that has been resolved. I'll pull up the results for discussion here.
When you pull it out, does the TIF district include buying a snowmaking machine to have snowmobiles that would go there, considering it's January 2nd? And it's green outside.
We're actually gonna use all the money that we're not spending on winter contractors to make snow.
Fill up those trails.
You can use the water from the Richardson Pond.
Okay, so as you know, what for collective bargaining, what the voters approved is the cost items. And so really they're ratifying the whole contract because without the cost items, what really is a collective bargaining agreement, but that's what this is focused on. And so what this says is that in 2024, the cost items total $32,280. So that would be the addition to the operating budget, in addition to if this article passed, and 30,000 in 2025 and 31,000 in 2026. So the makeup of those costs, I put a separate webpage together, which kind of details the whole process and has a copy of the entire agreement. But what you'll see here is this is the summary to the select board. So the cost item, or the biggest things that changed, is it solidified the seasonal schedule. So ever since I've been here, they've gone Monday to Thursday in the summer. So that solidifies that with a start date as the first Monday in June and to go through Labor Day. It counts. So right now, holidays count towards overtime for the highway department. What this contract says is that any paid leave counts towards overtime, but only from December 1st to March 31st. So point being, if it's somebody takes a day off and then it snows and they're working all weekend, they're on overtime. They don't have to work the first 8 hours before they start triggering overtime. And it's basically in recognition of the emergency response work that they do. It expands the on-call to include Fridays in the summer. So they always had Fridays off, but nobody was on call. So like things come up and it was always just the road agent. So now we have an on-call program where they go and we still have the on-call in the winter. So it establishes a uniform dress. So right now they kind of like wear whatever they want. And this contract says that they have to wear a uniform and named upper part and boots, and they have to wear pants. And it provides them an annual stipend of $750. So right now we budget $12,000 for uniform service that only like half of them use. And this is like uniform laundering and all that. Quite frankly, for me, I'd want somebody else to wash the clothes that I would volunteer culprit in. But they wanted this instead. So it's less money for the town and it's what they want. And then what the contract language says is that there's no wage provisions of the contract. It is simply what the select board offers to other non-union employees. So for this year, the select board is offering a step and a 3% cost of living. And so that's what the majority of this $32,000 is that step and cost of living. And then in future years, that's what the cost would be. So you'll see these asterisks here. It says depends on townwide annual wage adjustments for employees budgeted by select board. So if next year the select board says no step and cost of living, then that cost item will be like next to zero.
Now, has the select board weighed in on this contract?
They've approved it.
They've approved it.
Mhm.
So what happens if the voters do not approve the order?
Yep, so you go down to the next warrant article, which says collective bargaining agreement renegotiation and vote. And so hopefully if they vote no on this, they vote yes on this, which says we go back to the table and find something better.
And so the number, instead of being 25,000, is now 32.
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah, that, I put 25,000 in there as a placeholder
Right.
because I didn't know what it was gonna be, yeah, because we were still actively negotiating.
I have two questions.
Yes,
Line E or C, on call for the summer. Go up. Your other up, there you go.
yep.
So if they take Monday off in the summer and they get called in on Friday, then it wouldn't be overtime, right?
Correct.
All right. And then why is year one more than, why does it go down a couple grand and up? Intuitively, you would think it would be an increase each year.
Because the uniform dress thing, it says that we will provide them like 3 sweatshirts, 5 t-shirts, a jacket, and whatever that have the badge, like when they're hired, that have the seal and their name badge on it.
So initial issue,
Initial issue.
All right.
So we have initial issue for the whole crew, and so that's why the clothing stipend is higher here. Yeah, good questions. Thanks for the help with that. Initial issue, yeah.
sorry.
Initial issue.
Surprised the end of that. So we're talking about now.
Works.
Okay.
Any other
Holiday.
questions on that bargaining agreement? Okay. What's our position?
I'm in favor of it.
Okay,
I'm good.
I'm good. Unanimous.
Great.
All right. Okay, I think that, are there any other warrant articles that we need to discuss per se? I'd like to then focus on a different topic, which is the use of unassigned funds. One of the things we have is the,
There's 6, right, Scott? There's 6 o'clock.
6 or 5:45.
6
6, okay.
at the middle school.
It's at the middle school tonight, yeah.
so can you walk us through?
Yes.
Tonight, in the 23, we had the unassigned fund balance went to the tax rate. When did that take effect? Walk us through that process and how it's used and so on.
Okay. I will pull up. The tax rate setting document. Because that's where it happens. So it happens at tax rate setting.
Yeah, it's almost like a revenue line, right?
Yeah,
Kind of.
exactly. Yep. Best way to describe it. So if we go to tax rate and we go to 2023 tax rate, so it shows you all the jurisdictions at first and what the tax effort is. So right, our tax effort was 4.9 million, and that's where we got the 266 tax rate. So that tax effort is obviously not our budget because we approved like $9 million worth of things. So if we scroll to the municipal page, you'll see that we approved $9.3 million of things. We have $4.3 million of locally collected revenue. And then we have $747,000, which we use as fund balance. And you add back in the war service credits and overlay, and that's how you get your tax effort. So that's when it happened. And the select board made a vote on whenever, November
Yes.
something.
So then when though did the residents see an effect on their taxes?
When they pay their tax bill.
So December would have been worse if they had done this.
Yes.
The answer.
Yeah, but really not a whole lot worse, right? Because the total tax rate 1669, the town's 266. So it would have been the difference between like 276 and 266, or 1679 and 1669. But it's an impact.
Right.
So, and then they approved all of the warrant articles except for one
Residents did in March.
in March, and then that hit the tax rate.
And that's where we get this $9 million number, right? So that $9 million number is the budget and everything else which was approved. So what we see, here, actually, I have it because I like to keep things. So this is why all these things in your budget binder, right? And I'm not saying like, don't ask the questions, but if we look at the 2022 tax rate, because looking at one tax rate setting document doesn't really help you a whole lot. How does it change and how do these things look year over year? So if we look at 2022, we see our tax effort was 4.2 million. And if we go to our page, we see approved 8.7. We see we had 4 million in locally collected revenue, and our $700,000 number is in a different line. It's in fund balance voted surplus, not in fund balance to reduce taxes. So it's the same thing. Like the same thing happens. It just happens at a different time. And the other thing that's important, and this is why it's important for the tax rate impact statement, is when it happens this way, when it's fund balance voted surplus, residents make that decision and nobody can change it. It happens, it's a definitive. And so when you're calculating a tax rate impact, if this, then that, period. When it happens the other way, that is a subjective decision that happens after people vote. And so we can't reasonably, and Scott hit the nail on the head, and I went back and read your email numerous times when I was putting together the tax rate impact thing, because I was like, how is nobody else understanding it as good as I did when Scott told me? But this $747,000 number is a subjective decision that happens in November. And so when residents are making a decision in March, we can't guarantee them that this will happen in November. And so we can't, so we have to artificially inflate the tax rate impact, which is what, fast forwarding a little bit, I think this is where you're headed anyways. But we have to tell them that the cumulative tax rate impact would be 73 cents when the actual tax rate impact that all the reasonable people in the room expect to happen is 37 cents. Why would we do that? Why would we, when 40% of people voted no on every single article last year, why would we give them more of a reason to vote no, which is fake numbers? Why would we say that their average tax bill will go up $310 when it'll only go up $157? That's crazy. And I hope I can convince Joyce, and who was the other one? Oh, it was you? I forgot that it was you. Change my mind, Dan.
Well, no, the rationale, and I appreciate this, the rationale was that it showed the taxpayers exactly what they were paying. And in each case, this doesn't change that a great deal, but at one point we were saying no tax impact in this corner and no tax impact on this, and no impact on this. But in fact, they're still paying for that. That's what it costs to run this government to do that. So that was the rationale that we worked on last year. That we actually showed you what you were paying for.
I think if we do option 2, it's last year, but more accurate. Right. Because if you go, and it's silly because we did a revaluation, so you can't add up the numbers evenly. But if you total all the tax rate impacts from the March 2023 warrant, and then look at how much the tax rate actually went up, the tax rate went up a fraction of it. Because we were forced to overestimate we did option 1. And we overestimated, and those are fake numbers.
Also, one of the numbers on the right be fake.
They're not really.
They're all fake. I mean, if column 1 is fake and column 2 is just an adjustment off of fake numbers, and it's just lower fake numbers.
It isn't an adjustment off fake numbers though, because what it does is if the way we did it in 2022, where it's fund balance voted surplus, what we're doing is we're taking, and the warrant article would say $150,000 from the tax rate, which is exactly this money, and $150,000 from unassigned fund balance, which is cash on hand, which we have, and we can commit that.
You're really saying that you're too stupid to understand that if like, taking this 37 cents that we're giving you to use, and however you would like, toward the 73 cents.
The problem is
That's saying that they don't understand. That's the way it really is.
Counterpoint. I hear what you're saying, and I hate the perspective that people want to make decisions for people because they're too stupid to make decisions for themselves. What I would argue is we're feeding people bad information. So we're asking people to make decisions when they think that if they vote yes on everything at 73-cent impact.
The communication passage that you're doing is you're taking the step away that says, we're going to let this reduce your tax rate, which means if nothing is approved in the warrant articles.
So the footnote's different this time, Steve, and I'll tell you why. Let's say people vote down this one, okay? And so $150,000 from unassigned fund balance isn't committed at town meeting. What the select board would do, just like they did last year, is they would just use that $150,000 afterwards to buy down the tax rate generally. So we would have numbers in both of those columns.
It's counterintuitive what you just said, though. You're saying it's subjective. They may not do it.
And that's why this is better than this. It is still not perfect.
Okay, now here's my
Mhm.
other issue. If you do it that way,
Mm-hmm.
it says, let's say, we'll say, use it as surplus.
Mm-hmm.
Problem I have with that is that now you're putting at risk. Nothing happened for the things that they were approved. So, and they've just gone through a huge
Mhm.
assessment increase that has increased their taxes. They're very negative at this point.
Right. So why would we tell them this when nobody thinks this is going to happen?
Because it's purely consistent.
That's what?
What?
That's what the true impact of it is. If you did nothing with the unassigned fund balance, that is the actual impact on the left.
But if we did it this way, it's built into the warrant article as part of the decision that they're making. And it's built in an equitable way. And you can still do this on the tail end if anything fails or if there's more unassigned fund balance than you thought.
So why don't we have a warrant article that voters can vote on to use unassigned fund balance to buy down the tax rate? Just have a warrant that says that. So don't give the select board an option, mandate it. And then you just give them option one.
It'd be advisory. It would be advisory. But even in that case, I still think we're doing a disservice to residents because these are not real numbers.
They are if you do nothing with the unassigned fund balance.
But why would we do nothing with the unassigned fund balance?
Well, because what happens in a year?
Our policy says not to keep any more than 12.5%.
I just think 2 years ago it was free, right?
And we all wanted to get away from that.
Right. Last year was 100% paid for. Now it's like 45% paid for. Next year it could be 30% because we don't have a lot of fund balance up. That's
Right.
why if we just say, I'm just in favor of option one. Here's what it is.
I think the challenge that I saw on Facebook last year was a lot of people were saying, okay, well, we know we're voting for this, but we don't know how much it's really going to cost us. And so people are having a hard time making that decision because they didn't have or couldn't understand. So yes, we are giving voters the ability to more easily understand the decision to make.
One of the arguments is, this is what it costs to run your government. But we're actually, that's not what, this isn't what it costs to run their government. We run our government with less money than this by about 2%. Or, yeah, about 2%.
Right. Yeah, I just think we're setting ourselves up for failure if we purposefully overestimate the tax rate impact. And that's what we did last year, and support dropped tremendously from when we told everybody it was free. I think it's better because it's more transparent, but this is a way to equitably and accurately reflect what the impact of their actual decisions will be on their tax bill. And if we have the ability to give them more concrete, more information, more specifics, I don't know why we wouldn't do that. Anybody who cares enough to think what the actual cost is will be able to dig into the numbers. I think what we're doing here is saying that for the general person that's just reading the warrant article, we want to give them enough information to make an informed decision.
You're dumbing it down so they vote for it, is what you're doing.
No, that's what we did before by saying there's no tax rate impact.
No, but I think by doing it this way, by giving them option two, you're basically saying, it's all, at the end of the day, it's $750,000. It's either going to reduce your general, it's going to reduce it no matter what.
Right.
You're just burying it in here and showing these warrant articles as more favorable.
It's funny that you're saying burying because this is option 2 is a way to make sure it happens. Option 1 is subjective.
No, it has risk.
No, I think it's.
Where's the risk though? Because if
The risk is this.
I'm ready.
They already know they've got a tax. It's heavy. And every one of these increases their tax now. So anybody who's on a fixed income that has been suffering under fuel and food costs and fuel
Mhm.
are sitting here with extra money out of their pocket already. And they're saying, wait a minute, I can't afford an increase in my taxes. And I wanted to stay in this town.
Right.
So now you're saying to stay in this town, I have to take more out.
But
of
what's
my
the
pocket.
difference between option one and option two in that scenario? So the way I see the difference is maybe it's somebody who really supports the fire department and they really want to say, hey, I want to support that fire truck capital reserve because I recognize the importance of that. But if they read the article and say that it's going to cost them $19 on their tax bill, and they're going to say, that's too much, I can't afford that. I'm going to vote no because of
If
that.
I'm an elderly person,
But if the
if
actual
I'm an elderly
seven,
person, I need that fire truck for the next 6 years. That doesn't come due till later. So why should I pay for something that
so you
somebody
make a
else
different
is
argument. You're changing the subject though. You're moving the goalpost. The
No,
point
no,
is,
I'm thinking for the people. The people are thinking this way already.
I'm lost on
I'm sorry, we've all said that we need to put money away for these things, right?
That's our
absolutely
position.
required.
I'm just saying, by doing it this way, by saying you're still going to get an increase if you vote for that, and there's no impact on it, by putting it equally across all.
Mhm.
I'm not saying it should be surplus and let the board decide where it goes. I'm just suggesting that putting it equally across all puts every item on here at risk of not happening at all. Whereas if you take our priorities and you apply the surplus to those in priority sequence, and then say, all of these, we believe are the things that are essential.
Oh, I
and
missed
therefore-
that.
So
You want to fund 100% the first three.
Right.
Yeah, because then the rest, those first three that we feel are essential for the stability in the town
Yeah.
should get the surplus
I- I-
first.
I-
And then everything else.
Essential to me, the ones that.
Everyone, okay, then let's put everyone. at
Could we put something as a preamble to the voter guide that helps, describe this for voters, and would that help us find the middle ground here?
And the point is that the surplus money is already money that's been raised by taxes.
Right.
So it's already there. And saying it's no tax impact is somewhat disingenuous, as you mentioned, because there was a tax impact.
Right.
It's just not now.
We have a
Yes,
surplus and we need to go and keep
It's a dividend.
12% or so of that from year to year to year for stability purposes. Anything over that's surplus gets applied back, paid back to the people and reducing the tax rate.
So where is the fairest place to put that? Is it to apply it to the operating budget?
Can.
Is it, can,
Can. Yep.
then where is the fairest way to put that? Do we spread it out over everything? Or do we do three top priorities and then how do we do that? What's the mechanics with that?
So I think that there's going to be, there would be, because there has been a lot of dissent to the idea of picking and choosing warrant articles with not equitable funding from fund balance. Because of the exact point that you made earlier, Steve, about we in doing that, we are making decisions for voters instead of letting them make their own decisions. Because of course they're going to vote yes on something if it doesn't have a tax rate impact, even though it already did. And so 5 years ago, the town didn't have enough unassigned fund balance to fund all of them. And so the select board said, well, people always approve the fire truck, so we'll put that on the tax rate and then we'll fund the rest of them. And the fire truck passed and all the rest of them passed, and everybody was really pissed and said, you backed us into a corner. You made this decision for us. That wasn't an equitable. And I suspect that if it's fund the first three, fund the first four, then that would be the percent.
Aren't you making the decision for people how to spend the unassigned fund balance by reducing the warrant article amounts?
No, because if they vote no, then that doesn't happen and it reverts back to option one.
Assuming the select board doesn't.
And that's the problem with option one. So option two puts more power in the hands of the people to make things definitive.
To me, it doesn't matter because at the end of the day, it all nets out to be the same.
Yeah, I agree.
It's option one is a consistent option. Option two is fake people into really believing it actually costs less money and to get them to vote on it. I mean, that's reality of it is. To my mind is we're reducing the hit on paper in their phase versus in November if the select board votes to put that 750,000 into in the revenue column. It's,
I don't see it that way. And the funny thing is, I see the exact opposite way, which is just funny. So I guess the group, unless there's more to discuss, I guess the group should make a recommendation to select board on how to proceed. Option one, I mean, you say it's consistent. We've only done it 1 year. And we learned a lot from doing it that year. And what we learned is in doing it that way and overestimating it, 40% of people came in and voted no, when the average support was 60% before.
but then aren't you making a decision for people by moving that money into that line? That's how I see it.
I know people that are already saying I'm gonna vote no on everyone.
Yeah, but I don't think those people, option one, option two, their mind isn't going to change. And that's the point I was trying to make to you earlier. But I think the people that are on the fence, giving them the most accurate information is giving them the tool to make the most informed decision. But I guess we just fundamentally disagree that option two is more accurate than option one. I didn't pull up the other document.
I think we should just go into your contingency. Yeah. So you can tear something down or
You're terrible.
buy a piece of land or.
As a hypothetical, if we went and had 3 consecutive years where the voters went and said no to the highway heavy equipment capital fund, to the point where we ended up not having any snow plows plow the roads, what happens?
You don't go out till April.
No, actually, what happens is when that snowplow goes down, then we have to have big fund to buy a new.
Sure.
Buy a new.
If they approve.
But if they approve it, if they don't approve it, then the level of service degrades, right? That's the result. It's a cause and effect. And we hope that we don't get there. Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do by going
Trying
into
to
these warrant articles.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
We have no capital reserves. You pay for everything, pay as you go. The tax bill could vary from month to month,
Oh,
from
yeah.
year to year, significantly.
absolutely.
All right, we should vote because I know Scott's
Yeah.
trying to leave.
So what is the position we're voting on?
Option one or option two? I mean, you guys were talking about an option three, which is.
Option two, yeah, I was.
Well, I guess instead of actually, it's not an option, it'd be, are we in support of using an unassigned fund balance to fund a portion of the warrant article?
To tell people that.
Correct.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. In that case,
Are we in favor of?
Please, Scott.
Showing the tax
Option two.
50%.
Yes.
You want this yes or you want the tip yes? You only get one.
Honestly, if I only get one, it would be this one because I can understand why you don't like the tip. I can't understand why you don't like that.
It goes against everything I've said, but option two will trick people into voting for this, and these will get funded versus not getting funded. We're in a deeper hole.
Sounded like yes.
Yeah,
So,
yes. That's an option two.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm no.
Yeah.
I'm in favor of option two. Money's fungible.
I love it. Hey, good luck, Scott.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good
Well,
luck.
Aaron, did Gart know that we were coming?
No, I didn't tell him.
Yeah.
So I encourage Rick to go tonight because I have a more optimistic perspective than you do and Rick presented it really well, like, hey, like, let's just do this. And I think when I talked about it, he said he was going to challenge them to sign the petitions. Like, hey, think this is a good idea with me.
Yeah.
But I think it would be, my perspective was, I think it would be rude to present the school board a petition warrant article if you didn't at least go ask them about it first, kind of thing.
Well, I talked to, I wrote to Carrie Neal and told her,
Nice.
telling her that we were coming, because I don't like to.
Yeah, I told the select board that the petition was going around, so.
So it's the Barrington Middle School.
No.
Right, we've got
Cafeteria.
about- Yeah,
Okay.
okay.
Are there any other lunatic things coming to us?
Good night.
We meet.
Like warrant articles, like petition
Same time.
warrant articles?
Same time, same place. And it should be quick because unless the select board makes any changes, we have a pretty good understanding of where decisions are.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. You got a question?
Yeah, I forgot what it was.
Oh,
Are there any other
Petition?
petition warrant articles? like we have?
Petition deadline is the 9th. So,
Anybody come to you asking for you for help on
no, I haven't heard of any additional
selling
petition.
purple light bulbs and all that stuff we had a couple of years ago that was
Yeah.
awful?
I haven't heard of any. There was a series of petition zoning amendments that were turned in late, which is, you hate to see it, 50 people signed it. So what we did is we're having the planning board talk about it tonight and see if they want to support them. If they want to put them on the ballot, kind of because the person missed the deadline. So I don't know if they'll do it or not. I actually don't think the requests are that unreasonable. One request is to increase the, for the residential zones in town, to increase the minimum lot size from 2 acres to 3 acres. And the other one is to increase the width for a backlot subdivision. Right now it's 50 feet. If you have 50 feet of frontage and a bunch of backland, you can have 2 lots. The petitioner wants to increase it from 50 to 75. So there's a little bit more room from driveway and budding lots. I actually don't think those are super unreasonable. They don't drastically change anything. The 2 to 3 acres, I don't think that will do what he wants it to do, because the real problem that I think people have is they don't like conservation subdivisions.